Hello, everyone. My name is Richard Brent. I'm the editor-in-chief of Briefing magazine, and welcome to this webcast, How Can Firms Harness Data to Drive Strategic Advantage? And if this is the first time you're joining us, Briefing is the publication for legal business leaders like yourselves to share and develop practical insights for smarter business management. We think of it as the publication for the work and world of legal business leaders. Our regular publications, including Briefing, which is now an app for both Apple and Android devices, includes regular interviews, data-rich reports and case studies that cover every aspect of legal business management throughout the year, from business development strategy to risk profiling, process improvement initiatives to people management challenges, and of course the outcomes of firms' innovation efforts, whether those are technology, flavored or otherwise. The subject today certainly fits into the former category, may fit into the latter as well. It's data development and strategy, something that's been much discussed in Briefing over the years in many different contexts. But today we'll be talking about whether and how firms can manage to make it work harder as an asset to transform competitive advantage specifically. Where is business data today not being used to its fullest potential, whether that's to grow the business more sustainably, to serve clients more proactively or simply just more effectively, or perhaps to diversify into new revenue opportunities? Which tools, including, yes, indeed, potential forms of machine learning, can be put to work on the volumes of organizational data in ever more channels and systems around the firm to deliver a meaningful and measurable difference to how things are done? Are law firms already seeing tangible examples of value in this space, and how much is truly possible present? A quick reminder before we get started that the whole of the next hour is being recorded and it will later be distributed to the Briefing audience and readership. And we've specifically allotted some time at the end for questions from you. Please do feel free to use the Q&A here at the bottom of the Zoom, which I'm sure you're familiar with. But we'd also like to invite you to come off microphone if you'd like to and put your questions or indeed share your own perspectives on what we're talking about today with us. We'd love to actually hear your voices. And if you'd like to do that, just raise your hand and I will come to you and somebody will bring you onto the microphone. So without further ado, my guests today are Fernando Antas da Cunha, who is the managing partner of the law firm ECIJA, which has 800 professionals internationally covering multiple sectors and was recently shortlisted by the Financial Times for being one of the most innovative law firms in Europe. We also have Dale Hodgkinson, who is the head of strategy and architecture at the international law firm Slaughter and May. And we have Moacyr Galo, who is head of sa.global labs. sa.global we have covered in Briefing in various interviews over the last year. We've heard how they're a Microsoft Gold partner and a member of its inner circle, and how they're leveraging the potential of the Microsoft stack in many different ways. sa.global Labs is the organization's initiative to drive the vision for artificial intelligence specifically, and the potential that has to harness data in many different ways. So I'm going to start with Fernando, and Dale and Moacyr are going to join us again later. And so, Fernando, can you start by just giving our audience a little bit of background as to where your firm is at present, what its main focuses are, so that we can take that as the context around which we're going to be talking about your investment in data.
Sure. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for the invitation, of course. First, I just said that in my practice, I'm a lawyer in Portugal. I think that you all know that Portugal is a small country, and so the challenge for us, it's much bigger when we try to do something different comparing with our competitors. So I think that from the beginning, I think that we have to put the client as the center of our business. And it seems like an obvious conclusion, of course, but the truth is that lawyers have always been trained to know the law in depth and not so much to focus on the client and the business. And so I think that today more and more we hear about legal design thinking. And so I think that this is the key word in fact. As an entrepreneur, I always learned that one of the secrets of successful business lies in anticipation. If we pay attention to what is going around us, we can anticipate some products or services, that with a high degree of probability may be well received by clients. And so the thing is, what we try to do is to talk and to chat with different clients and to think or to try to identify what we can do in a short-term period that no one's or a few competitors are already identified as an opportunity. A clear example was the creation of an area, of a practice area that we called legal intelligence. One of the firm's partners and his team are only dedicated to developing and anticipating the creation of new services. And so what we did, we just started in Portugal. For you to have an idea, in 2015, we started the firm in Portugal with 5 people. Now in Portugal, we are at 100 people. And in 2017, when we merged with ECIJA, the Spanish law firm, we were in the total 250 professionals. And now we are 1,850 lawyers, approximately, only in 5 years. And of course, that it's something that is not quite usual to do. Mostly when we are talking about Portugal and Spain, which are completely different markets than UK or US. And so this is something that we achieved because we are completely focused. Even if we are a full service firm, we are very focused on what we call the digital law or the new ways to provide legal services. And so this is what we did. And I think that the main and the key word is exactly to try to anticipate a vision, what we think that what will be the future in the legal sector, and to provide our firms with some kind of resources, with some tools. And it's something like a lab. You try and try and try, and sometimes you target the services and you get successful.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you tell us a little bit about what you say it's all about anticipating the future? Can you tell us a little bit about what you do see there already, if you have got to that point? Yeah.
Okay, more and more we hear the term legal design, as I told you, and rather than immediately focusing on the solution based on our experience, that it's something that we usually do as lawyers. We know in depth the law, and we immediately try to get a solution or to bring a solution to the clients. And what we think is that if we put ourselves in a position of attentive listeners, what we will have is a completely game changer. Because when you start talking with clients and ask them what they really want and what they still miss from us that we should do in a different way, this is like a puzzle. You bring all the pieces together, and it becomes very clear that you have to do the things differently, or you have to bring some different products. And of course that lawyers, like any other organization, are part of an ecosystem that goes beyond lawyers themselves. Mm-hmm. And it is essential to create an environment of creativity, a space for discussion where new ideas emerge. As time passes, the universe of people and organization increase, and with that, of course, the possibility of creating new products or services increase also exponentially, which means that, for example, what happened with us, I will give some examples later, but with the GDPR regulation. In fact, in 2016, when the regulation was in force, but with a 2 years time lapse before every companies were adapt in Portugal until I think in the end of 2017, no one talks about this situation and this new possibility. And together with Spain, what we did is that we thought, okay, this is a very good opportunity for us because no one's are completely prepared, because no one's effectively know how it works and how to do and how to help our clients. We have a lot of very, very good firms here present in this webinar, but we know that when we identify the typical track record of the firms in M&A, in litigation, and so, everyone are very experienced. But when you have a very specific service or law that came into force and that no one worked before, this is a very good opportunity. And so what we did is that in 2016 and 2017, together with some technological partners, we built a tool that we anticipate all the legal documents that we had to provide to clients, as also that we built the entire project that we had to enter into the clients, which mean the assessment, the gap analysis, the action plan, the monitoring the process, auditing the process, and we built a single tool to provide this kind of services to clients. And so what happened, for example, in Portugal, our clients are typical the SMEs companies. And so what we achieved with this tool is that we achieved new clients, very big companies in Portugal, that if we didn't have this kind of possibility, it would be impossible to provide services to these companies. And so now we have a very large group of people that only focus to try to identify the new trends of law. So something like cybersecurity, blockchain, e-privacy, I don't know, cryptocurrencies, all of these that we are talking more and more. We try first to understand the technology, which is not easy. To be honest, I don't know anything about technology. I'm only the managing partner of the firm, so I have people that knows a lot of that, not an expert, because I think that no one is expert right now in these specific fields, because we are just starting now to have a clear view how it works and what kind of challenges that we will have in the near future. And so with these different kind of people, we start discussion and we start brainstorming with them and try to build what we think that will be our role within the clients to achieve what they will need in the near future to implement this kind of technologies or products in their companies.
Okay, thank you. Understood, of course, that you're not a technology expert, as you've said, but can you tell us a little bit about what these developments have required, or what sort of decisions you've had to make in terms of how you address data specifically in the business in order to enable this sort of development
I
and
think
productization?
that one of the main problems is that usually we don't have the enough resources to start doing this project. So we have to bring together some different players that we can teach them our part of the game, because we are consultants at the end of the day. We know about law, and they know how to scale in terms of technology what we need to provide legal services. So what we did in this specific situation with GDPR, but not only with GDPR, we are involved in very different projects right now. And to be honest, this is a marathon. We didn't achieve yet what we hope to achieve very shortly or in a very short period of time. But I would say that what we have to do, and what we did with GDPR, for example, we start building different sectors And what we start is to imagine what is a typical company structure in terms of data, in terms of personal data. And we create what we call a tree of treatment, which is to build different pieces with different departments, HR, marketing, sales, and so on, and to see exactly how they deal with the data protection, with the personal data, sorry. And with this, of course, that we built a tool that with some questions that we raise within the clients, they typically answer. We have that, we don't have this. We filed all this data in this specific hard disk or wherever, and with that we build what we call the gap analysis. What are the gaps into this in the company? And of course, that from the moment that we start having clients in different sectors, we were able to scale all the project exactly in the same way in the previous one, because at the end of the day, when you are talking exactly the same sector, usually it's very similar the way that they work, and so we did this with of course with the technology companies that help us to build some technology that immediately identify what were the gaps and what we have to do to solve the problems raised during this assessment stage.
Thank you very much, Fernando. I'm going to go and speak to Dale now, but we're going to bring you back a little later to have a discussion with everybody else involved. So thank you very much. And as I mentioned, my next guest is Dale Hodgkinson from Slaughter and May. Welcome back, Dale.
Richard.
How are the considerations for Slaughter and May similar or different to what you've just heard there from Fernando?
I mean, when me and Fernando spoke before, I think it is quite interesting. You see this across all different markets. You've got well-established law firms that are sort of working on a lot of legacy, both good and bad technologies you're bringing forward. And then you've got new entrants that are just embracing new technology at a high rate of knots. I guess the biggest difference is obviously the depth and history of data that we have to look at. Whereas obviously, as Fernando had mentioned, the rate of growth for them, they're just collecting all that data now. And obviously that maturity journey is different. We've got probably a lot more gatekeeper models in place, which is good because that helps keep the data in a more mature state, just from lessons learned of old. Whereas I guess I do see in many of the scenarios people get into today, some of the core basics of that you would have done years ago to ensure data is cleansed, people just go, well, that's just unmanageable now, and they drive forward. So there are some clear differentials between new entrants, and I think they both have their equal challenges. It's how do you, as a well-established environment, keep yourself agile like a new entrant to the market? And I think for a new entrant to the market, how do you establish that maturity model if you're trying to build it as you go? So I would say that's probably one of the key differentiators. Is ours is more about how to agile with a mature model, as opposed to how to mature an agile model, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. I'm going to say the words artificial intelligence. And what challenges specifically have you had with that, or sort of opportunities have you identified for where it can be brought to bear?
I mean, yeah, so we've seen both success and challenges around it. I mean, as many know, we was heavily involved in Luminance in the early days of 2016, and where we was having to have teams of associates and trainees looking at due diligence over a weekend to make a core decision. We was able to cut the timing down on that. But I guess to be clear as well, though, any AI tool is a complement tool to someone's operation. It's not a substitute for, you still need people to make measured decisions at the end. But again, if you can make a measured decision within 4 hours rather than 48 or 24 hours, then that's still a major milestone forward. But equally, I mean, the key to AI is it's often more data the better the results, or unmanageable amounts of data that just people couldn't achieve. And I think what we have to be careful, as I did one sort of review with AI on a particular matter type, and I said, right, okay, we've done the sample set, let's now do the rest of the matters. And they went, no, that was the complete amount, because it was more about high value work rather than high volume. And that can sometimes be a challenge when using AI, because actually, when you take it back, people probably could have done the effort as quick as the AI in that scenario. And you're almost then using a tech for tech's sake rather than it being purposeful technology where you're using it for purpose. It's got an actual outcome rather than just using the technology. Equally, there are more recent success when you take, say, like time narratives, you know, where you've got over 4 million of those, you can use it as a means to assess narratives and take away the pressure from lawyers necessarily having to be explicitly descriptive in lots and lots of time. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, lawyers are busy on a daily basis, and there's a lot of administrative tasks they have to do, not just fee earning. And so using AI so that they don't have to be, you know, if they're super busy and they want to do a single narrative rather than multiple narratives, you can use the AI tool to still break that down so that you still get that measured output, but you're not putting the pressure back onto the lawyer to be more administrative in their task effort. So I think that's the balance, is when looking at AI, it's a bit like a mechanic looking at various spanners in their toolkit. I think it's a use that you would have, but there's plenty of other tools you could use, including people. And we can't discount people from sometimes assessing data as much as we do the tools we want to use with them.
Interesting. Have you got any other examples of where you see potential for applying AI to the business data specifically? Absolutely.
I mean, some of the challenges, and we talked briefly about, is the governance. I mean, we're all sat on huge amounts of email content, and obviously there's a lot of untapped intelligence sat in email systems. And I know a number of companies do varying things, but I think there's always going to be that underpinning challenge of how do you do that in a governed way without sort of breaching. And this is the thing I think a lot of people underplay with law firms. As much as you have this sort of regulatory bodies of SRA, you also have GDPR from the people side. You know, you have your clients, various regulatory bodies as well. So when you're looking at data, you've got to be quite mindful of these various regulations that sit around it, and that can sometimes either impede or enhance the way you do that assessment. So we're looking at what unstructured data we have that we can do assessments with, but still ensuring that we do it honouring the various governing models that sit around that. And as I say, both external and internal.
Yeah. Where would you say you are on this overall journey at the moment? How much is there further to go?
I think, like with any maturity model, the market's changing faster, as Fernando alluded to. There's a lot of new technologies coming into play. And so I think anyone that says, oh, you know, we're super, you know, advanced in this in any sector other than possibly technology sector specifically, I think it'd be quite a tall ask. I mean, I'm looking at technologies around IoT. You know, you've got every lawyer with a handheld device, a laptop. There's a lot of information. I know that the health systems in the market have managed to use that to do some measured benefits for us, and I'm trying to see what could be the legal angle on that. You've got you know, your various data modeling sets out there now, and different ways to slice and dice data to get the right results. We actually work with sa.global at the moment around sort of master data management, looking at how you do the interaction between both a hybrid model, because again, you don't necessarily have that perimeter control anymore where data is just in your perimeter. You now have data that might be sat in a SaaS, various cloud subscription services, or, you know, in an infrastructure as a service with another provider, or in on-prem. And again, it's how do you honor that governance, still get intelligence out of it, and glue it all together, which that can be quite a conundrum in itself.
Yeah. We'll probably come on to talk about this one a little bit later as well, but I just wanted to ask you, have you any examples of where you've been looking at extracting more value from data specifically for clients, to serve up to clients?
So a lot of it is looking at the obviously providing that enriched service. I think you've got to be careful as well sometimes with what level of data you share, because it's got to be true and relevant all the time if you're going to share it with external parties. And so that's something that, and I can't, you know, I am one of many people that oversees the benefits of data within the business. And so they're absolutely looking at these and understanding the modeling of it, but I think it's got to be done so that it's contextually relevant as well, and not just, as I say, I think one of the big things we don't want to do is do something that's just a fad or a gimmick, and it's just to tick a box. That it's got to have some meaningful outcome, both for the client that wants that data as much as from ourselves. We've looked at how we engage with GCs, and again, that's another area that we can look at how we do that sort of data enrichment between GCs and the firm. So we absolutely do look at those various use cases and see how to take forward. But I would say we're doing it in a quite, again, this is the difference, I suppose. Slaughter May's got quite a posture in the marketplace. They're seen as a prestigious firm. So you can't make rash decisions in that. You have to do them in quite a measured perspective way when you do that. So that's possibly, again, comes back to where, like Fernando said, they could grow. We looked at this, let's just go for it, let's grow. Obviously for ours, we're doing it in probably a bit more sensitive paced manner. Still will come to the same destination, but probably at different junctures.
Yes, different considerations playing into how you approach it. Okay, thanks very much, Dale. We're going to bring you back again later, along with Fernando. But I'm going to say goodbye to you for now. To those listening, do be thinking about any questions that you'd like to put to either Dale or Fernando, or indeed to Moacyr Galo, who now joins me, and as I mentioned, is head of sa.global Labs. Now, Moacyr, you've heard there two different perspectives, two different journeys, but involving similar factors. What's your perspective on theirs?
Okay, so thank you, Richard. I think that's as pointed by Dale, right? We have represented here different types of legal organizations, different practices, business sizes and reach. Each one in a different maturity level of its technology innovation journey. But for sure, the majority is willing to move to this next level, right, of what they are doing with data. So the point here is there is no one size fits all, right, when we are talking about innovation. And the two examples of Dale and Fernando shows that. So what's our vision for legal marketing in the next 10 years? Usually we overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years and underestimate the change in the next 10. So we have to find a balance between short, medium, and long-term initiatives, and direction is much more important than speed in this scenario, right? So we believe that in the near future, the driving force for legal innovation will come from corporate clients and GCs demanding new types of connected services, right? To help them address the challenges of how the competition game will be played in the digital economy of the next decade. Each leader in each business industry will need to compete aggressively to improve client experience or customer experience for one side, and reducing operational costs at the same time. And this is very challenging. And to achieve this, they will need to implement automated process using sophisticated algorithms, as Fernando said, blockchain, smart contract solutions. And this will demand proactive and automated statistical-based legal services, right, to help them take decisions nearly in real time. From the firm's perspective, from the legal firm's perspective, this brings new types of services and challenges and opportunities as well. And the key here, as the purpose of this discussion, is having proper historical, legal, empirical data, right, to deliver that back legal advice in a proactive way. So what challenges we hear from our clients and on to addressing that? So the first one is how to handle internal isolated data sites. As Dale said, right? So you have to leverage all the information stored in several disconnected systems during a long time. And that's the major challenge that we see. And as well, the conditions and restrictions, right, of legal marketing in terms of privacy concerns and how to handle data, how to take the data and train the models, right, in the proper way. But mostly to me, I think another important aspect is this technology user adoption. Because as Dale said as well, right? So lawyers are very conservative, and it's very difficult to adapt and change it when you're successful. And so we have to find a ways to not be intrusive and try to leverage as much as possible the current tools being used by them to not force adoption. Otherwise, users are not going to adopt any solution that disrupts the way they work, right? And the way they collaborate today. So taking that in consideration, it's important to understand that successful innovation projects depend 80% on business domain and only 20% on the tools. That's important. Again, as said by Dave there. Like the examples of Laura May and ECIJA, right, where we have executives, we have an understanding of your positioning and how you want to innovate, and backwards. Only after that, you define what kind of tools you're going to use. Sometimes you don't even need to use AI, right? So why to focus on the tools while the most important thing you have to focus is on the value for the business, right, that you have to drive. But the value from the perspective of executives and managing partners, and not from the technology vendors, right, trying to push you tools and that stuff. So from the technology side, in their understanding that how sa.global Labs has been helping our clients, right?
Yes, tell us about that.
We are trying to combine our specific focus and vertical experience on legal with this horizontal Microsoft long-term vision and huge investment on technology, right? To become a high-value, trustful, strategic innovation advisor. Instead of just talking about features, we want to discuss how to help our clients and work together in collaboration, right? To explore the potential of the tools, but trying to maximize the value, the strategic value from the business perspective, right? So basically what we do, it's what we call augmented intelligence research. So we're not trying here to take the hype of AI and just replace people with algorithms and that stuff, right? It's not the way that we're focusing this. We're trying to build a legal intelligence architecture that adds additional technology layers on top of what our clients have already done, right? So we are trying not to reinvent the wheel, but to leverage as much as possible the previous investments that our clients made in an agnostic way. So considering all solutions used from several vendors, not just ourselves and Microsoft, of course, right? So our main focus is to help our clients to transform the data and their legal knowledge into an asset, okay? So from one side, bringing more efficiency on processes when automating some complexities, right? And trying to reduce the time used and reducing, helping in reducing the cost, but potentially generating new recurring revenue from that internal knowledge as well on new services, right? That we can connect to the end client in terms of backend APIs or services that can be provided directly to the client side. Basically, we want to scale good legal reasoning, not focusing on replacing people, but augmenting the intelligence of attorneys, lawyers, and the internal team. Right? So we do this with a combination of several technologies, not just focusing on one. So that's the part of the labs to do the research, right? We're always looking ahead and trying to see how we can blend and use the right technology for solving the right problem. All of them are hosted in the cloud on Microsoft Azure, but there is an important aspect here because we are always using the client's tenant to protect privacy and confidentiality, so we don't have access to the data, right? We just provide the services, the backend and front-end services, and those technologies are installed into the client's tenant. So we don't have access to the data, right? But the most important element of innovation that we are bringing is a legal knowledge graph. So a legal knowledge graph is an additional layer, right? That traditional databases are focused on facts, right, on structured data and facts. But craft databases are focused on relationships. So basically what we're trying to do is to create an ontology for legal, where we mapped all the entities, I mean, matters, plaintiffs, defendants, questions of fact, questions of law, even legislation in each geography. We embedded in the knowledge graph the entire UK legislation, for example, and their properties. And then we use some machine learning models to do the connections between the silos, right, in that additional layer. So that's the purpose of the knowledge graph, to work to focus on the relationship between those entities and data. So with that abstraction layer, we can automatically detect and connect things, right, to make data more useful and to bring the knowledge from the data. So these definitions can be dynamically changed by the clients itself, can be extended because we have a common layer, but that can be extended. And then we can store in that knowledge representation all internal, external, structured, and unstructured data. Because as we have the information coming from our Microsoft tools like M365, emails, Teams, and anything, we can detect the entities there because we trained before, and then connect these in the knowledge graphs. So that information can then feed the models to be trained later, okay? I would like to recommend people to take a look to Microsoft Project Viva. In the website, there's a lot of information there on Microsoft. So Microsoft Viva has a element that's called Viva Topics, which is basically labels that you can attach to pieces of data, right? And then we use machine learning to train classifiers to detect the entities, right? So we can automatically, in emails or documents, identify clients, practices, and any kind of information that we can label and then connect in the knowledge graph later for further search, navigation, exploration in a visual way. We created a tool for that to do the supervision of the recommendations and searches from the model that we call Big Picture. That later we can show, and who are interested to see some demos of that, because it's very hard to see a representation of a knowledge graph, right? Just detailing, but it's the same thing that when you are doing a chalk talk, right? You basically write a circles and then connect the circles with each other. That's the basic idea of this interactive interface where subject matter experts can validate the recommendations and suggestions. And then only after that, we use that information to move to the next stage, right? And then use this to do some predictions and forecasts, like cash flow prediction or matter outcome prediction, or the cost prediction for a specific matter, even during the client matter inception, for example. So we have a lot of examples that then we can use that information. I have another recommendation. It's another project from Microsoft that's called Project Bonsai. And Project Bonsai is an initiative focused on reinforcement learning, right? Usually reinforcement learning now has been more mature on manufacturing industries, but we are working hard to create those autonomous systems frameworks for legal, but this is more long-term, right? So we just use reinforcement learning when we have enough information from the processes, from the recommendations we did, and the actions that actually users took from those recommendations. So in the future, models will be able to just recommend some possible next steps, right?
Okay. Thanks, Moacyr. What I'd love to do is actually bring Dale and Fernando back now to sort of get their perspectives on what you've just said, if that's okay. So you're going to stay with us, of course, to continue the conversation. And here we've got Dale and Fernando. And what I'd be really interested to know, both of you, is where you maybe see this sort of legal knowledge graph application could make a difference within your businesses. So joining up more silos of data, perhaps, if that's a challenge for you, structured and unstructured, in order to help your fee earners or your leaders make better decisions. Is that something that's either already on your plate or that you can see potential in, Dale?
It is. I mean, the only thing is, and it's not to be challenging to the sort of view from Moacyr, but the challenge is always going to run into, just because you can do something with data doesn't mean you necessarily should. And so there's still going to be certain challenges around that. There's also, you know, at the end of the day, all law firms, as much as they want to see these things successful, are also competing against each other. And there is a challenge around that as well, I think, because there's got to be a sort of a maturity of our firms going to say, well, there's enough work irrespective of whether we're competing or not. If there is, then there wouldn't be no fear. But I guess if there isn't, then there's going to be a level of, well, why would we put our crown jewels into developing that model and then someone else does? I mean, all you could end up with potentially is the future law firm being a tech company for certain aspects. I mean, we've certainly seen it, or I have. I mean, I've not just worked as well as I've worked in small, medium and large size firms. I think in the domestic law space, it's absolutely ripe for this type of sort of technologies, probably because it's more prescriptive in approach, and there is a lot more repeatable scenarios. I guess some of the challenges we're going to run into when you're doing high value work is you're also expecting that sort of high value legal mind. If it could be done by a computer, why would you be going to a high value firm to get that sort of knowledge? So I'm not saying it doesn't have a place, but I think what its place would be is to empower and enrich the fee earner to deliver that extra, you know. And again, this is what it comes back to, isn't it? The more information you can put to someone's fingertips to make a meaningful decision quickly, that in itself has a measured benefit and competition for the business. Because if another firm doesn't have that,
yes,
and it means they're a week away from making that sensible decision to give the advice back, as opposed to, like you say, you could do it maybe within hours. And that's again, even coming back to, as I say, the luminance model, you know, that was going to be, eventually it becomes the norm, right? Everyone's going to say, well, we'll have to do it to that bar, or otherwise we're just simply not going to get the, you know, we're not going to, by the time we've come up with our answer, the other firms have already either taken the work or rejected it. And by that point, you don't necessarily want it yourself anyway. So I hope that gives a bit of
absolutely,
that, Richard.
It does indeed. Thank you very much. A reminder to those watching, do let us know your own questions, or if you would like to give your perspectives on what we've already been talking about, either in the Q&A or, as I mentioned at the start, just raise your hand and you can speak to Dale or Fernando or Moacyr in person. Fernando, how about you, in terms of, you've been working with sa.global, of course. What potential can you see for sort of joining up internal data within the firm to drive decision making, efficiency, competitiveness?
Yes, we are very exciting we are working together with sa.global and Moacyr in a project to try to identify how can we bring all this knowledge and how can we get an advantage with this kind of tools in our work. Because I think that, as also mentioned by Moacyr, knowledge is the main asset of any law firms. And what distinguishes us from our competitors, what legacy has brought us here? How can we share knowledge that goes far beyond a typical share knowledge tool? And this is something, for example, I heard some law firm, one of the big law firms in US, they are now starting a project that a senior lawyer or a partner must share one single laptop with a junior lawyer. So they don't have two, they only have one. In order to be together and working together, and for the senior lawyer teach and coach the junior lawyer much more than the typical knowledge tools that we have, and that we have drafts and memos and several different type of documents. And so if we have a possibility to aggregate all this kind of knowledge, which, for example, I remember that Moacyr told me, Fernando, we can identify your written notes and to connect with a specific kind of work that you are doing, in order that junior lawyers know exactly what you or other partners or other senior people in the firm think about a specific situation. If you are in a meeting and if you write some notes and some bullet points that further on you will need it to build a strategy to provide to the client, this is something that usually we don't insert in our knowledge management tools. So if we have some kind of system to connect all these different environments that usually we work with, this is a very, very high value product for us. And so, again, I think that we were used to be sit in our desk and wait for work and clients to address our firms and to ask help for no matter what. And more clients are demanding from us not exactly what they know they need, but more what we can anticipate that will be the next challenge that they have to face. And for that, it's very, very important to release people from the executive, only the typical executive work that they do on a daily basis. I would say that 80% of our lawyers, they don't do anything else than draft legal documents and to execute the work that we ask them to do it on a daily basis. And so if we spend much more time interacting with our clients and to know exactly deeply their business models, probably we will achieve much more possibilities to bring and to add value with our work with these clients. And so to be very to say clearly what we are doing, we are identifying in terms of the tax law different kind of supports that governments in Europe are providing companies to innovate, to attract new people, and a lot of the different kinds of supports that they give to companies. And for example, in Portugal and Spain, you have to declare to the tax authorities what you do, how many employees you have in the company, what kind of loans you have. It's what we call the simplified information of companies. It's something that it's a public data that you can access every single time. So if we know what companies are doing in a specific field, and if we know, on the other hand, what kind of supports the government have for these kind of companies, and if we know how to address clients, how to achieve this specific goal, we can go, no matter who client we are talking, we can go and talk to them and say, look, we have a very good opportunity for you that we already identified, and that the only consequence is that we'll give you money and we will charge a success fee or a specific flat fee for this work. And no one asks us for that. And so it's a matter to think what we have available with the government, in the law, in different fields, and put all this together. Even if I'm completely focused on a specific field, it's impossible to share all this information with my 80 lawyers in Portugal or 800 colleagues around the world. And so if we have a tool like this knowledge map or graph, what we can have is that from the moment that we Google internally this kind of situation, we will get more and more answers with that, and we will build a specific product to address different clients.
And sorry, I just want to pick up on, I know there's someone's put something in the Q&A, I'll see for yourself, but just, and I'm not trying to detract from the data element. The point about the laptop and how you get that osmotic learning, which is what you referred to, shared between two individuals. I do think there is other technologies yet to mature that are also going to aid with that we can't detract from, and that's sort of the augmented learning method. You've got things like the Oculus, the HoloLens, and other things that will help bridge that gap. And I think some of the danger we've got in that space is we've all been given an insight to people being able to work comfortably from wherever with whatever technology. And I think you'll get more knowledge out of them that way, rather than necessarily a forced prescribed, you must sit side by side, because that doesn't necessarily work for everybody, right? And there's going to be people with varying circumstances that might mean, you know what, today I can't make it in the office. Does that mean I miss out and I no longer get access to that knowledge, or that I can't share that knowledge because I can't make it in? Because again, depending on where you are in the spectrum of your working career, you'll have varying challenges. So I do think some of those other technologies, as they mature, will also play a part in this knowledge sharing capacity. It's as I say, this comes down the route of what can we do with IoT to see how we capture knowledge from people without them even knowing, as in they're endorsing it, but they don't even realize how they're sharing their knowledge, and how we can help people consume it as well, giving them the right tech to do so. So it's just a point on that, because I worry sometimes as well, when you talk about the legacy ways of working, if we're not careful, we'll quickly rush back to everybody must be sat. And there's plenty of other industries. You've got the health sector driving forward with potentially doctors who can't make it to the scene of an accident, but yet they can still be at the scene of an accident. And I think that should be the same principles for lawyers. You may not be able to be at the particular meeting alongside someone, but there should be means and ways to get you to be at the scene, if that makes sense, not just in a pure data graph form.
Yeah. Thanks.
Sorry, anyway, I know there's a Q&A, Richard.
No, it's good. I was going to say it's absolutely fascinating in the context of sort of the future of collaboration, and we're all sort of finding our way with what that looks like. There's a question first for Moacyr. Do you have any examples of the recurring revenue channels that you sort of referenced that have been created, or that you see particular potential in using data?
Yeah. So, for example, I think that, as pointed by Dale again, I think the main focus here is to always think on user adoption, right? Challenge. It's not just because the tools can do something that we will be able to do it, that we have to do it, we allow it to do it, or the users will accept doing it, right? So I think what we are trying to do here is not be intrusive and trying to extract the knowledge from the tools being used today, especially when we are talking about Microsoft tools like Word, Teams, Microsoft Teams, and the tools that people has been using today. You're trying to get that to detect entities and some elements on that, on those documents, and then store that, right, in that centralized knowledge where users, considering all the visibility of the data, of course, some information cannot be shared, some information can, others don't, but maybe that just works for the specific user itself. Part of the information can be shared among same level of that way, so they can search and navigate right to that knowledge. So what we want to do is to empower junior lawyers. So with the simple fact that they describe some kind of matter during the client matter inception, we can just go to that knowledge and pick the elements, right, that statistically make sense and that works, right, in real time. And that's what we are trying to do. So going back to the Fernando's example, in some cases and some practices, we can install some elements of some agents in the clients, depending on the relationship you have there, right? And then extract some contextual information from the clients and try to make a matchmaking, right? So one of the elements we are thinking is to provide some tools to the GCs, so the GCs can do the search and navigation to that knowledge that was pre-validated, right, by the senior lawyers and the internal team. So then they can use something until the limit of what they can see, right? And then, if necessary, they can ask support and do some kind of automation. That's the way we see this combination, right, of the internal bespoke job being done in the way it is. And then we try to extract the knowledge in a less intrusive way possible until the limit of what can be done, right? and try to expose that and connect that as more automatically possible. When it's not possible, of course, that needs a manual creation and manual integration of the data. And then try to give some tools that you can explore that knowledge when you need it, right? So in that way, we think that we can help on transfer some of the accumulated knowledge from senior lawyers to junior ones, so that we can empower them, not replace them, and empower them with some elements, and until the limit of what is possible, right? In some cases.
Yes, okay, yeah, augmented, as you said, rather than artificial intelligence. We're nearly out of time, but I have got one more question through for Dale specifically, and I do want to get it in. Dale, on the topic of managing the data, how do you take the first step towards cleaning and structuring to get to the point where you can leverage it, if it's appropriate, as you've already said, meaningfully? Can you give us a sense of what...
Show my tech age here, but it's ECIJA, isn't it? Garbage in, garbage out. You've got to get your data center of excellence in place in order to I think that's the key. If you've got the right governance in place, data cleansing becomes a lot easier task because it's already started off in a healthier shape. However, for data that's already bolted, so to speak, and you haven't maybe had the excellence in place for it, then that's where you look at what tools you can put to do it on an enriching basis rather than maybe a big bang, because I think big bang can come with its challenges and you don't necessarily get the immediate benefits. If you do it on an enriching basis, you're already starting to see some of the value of that data whilst doing it, knowing that you're ultimately going to get to the final destination of it being in a healthy state. I think too many people try and go after data and say we must make it right from the get-go. They spend 3 years doing that, and by the time they do that, the value's been lost in the data that they started with. So as I say, I think there's no doubt, back to basics, get your governance and your center of excellence around data in the first place. And then, as I say, for those that you haven't done that on, recognize it's going to be a longer journey, but make measured steps en route so that it's sort of self-pollinating.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I like that we've gone from horizon scanning to right back to basics for the close. Thank you very much to everybody for watching us today, for listening in, to Fernando and to Dale and to Moacyr from sa.global. And Moacyr, if people are interested in learning more about legal knowledge graphs, what's their first port of call?
Oh, yeah, we are available. So anyone interested on going a little bit deeper on that, I know it's difficult just to explain that and not seeing, right? So we can provide some demos and more concrete examples if someone is interested. Just send an email and then we'll be in touch.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's been fascinating. See you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye.